If you ask me what is the strongest factor on the clock that would accelerate it, but also decelerate it, connected to natural aging, that would be estrogen loss, both in men and women, but more severely in women because of menopause.
Welcome to the Myers Detox Podcast. I'm Dr. Wendy Myers, and today we've got a great topic about testing your biological age using a very, very unique method, testing glycans. So we're going to be talking about that on the show today. And on this podcast, we talk about all things related to anti-aging, longevity, detoxification, health issues caused by toxins and heavy metals, and bioenergetics, one of my passions right now, and a lot of other advanced topics related to health. But today we're going to be talking with Nikolina Lauc. So she owns a company called GlycanAge, and that offers a biological age test that measures glycans, which are complex carbohydrates, not like simple carbs or the carbohydrates you're thinking about when it comes to your diet. But these are complex carbohydrates that indicate inflammation levels and predict disease risk, many times 6 to 10 years sooner than current tests. And these tests can also show age-related issues related to estrogen loss, so especially in menopause. We talk about how menopause really ages you, which I think we already know. But we can see evidence of that on this test and exactly why. And chronic stress also are major factors accelerating biological aging. We also talk about personalized interventions like hormone replacement therapy, stress reduction, and optimized diet and exercise, which can very significantly improve your biological age. And maybe when you get your test results back, you'll be more motivated to improve on all these different factors. Nicolina's father pioneered glycan research, inventing one of the first biomarkers to measure molecular aging. And GlycanAge has analyzed over 200,000 glycomes, representing 85% of the global glycan data. And they were the pioneers on this type of testing. And GlycanAge, this test, measures biological age, inflammation levels, and specific disease risk signatures, and can predict conditions like hypertension, rheumatoid arthritis, and other health issues like diabetes. So you can do something about that before you develop the issues. So prevention, so important. And we talk about the key factors impacting biological aging. So estrogen loss, like I mentioned, at menopause transition, accelerates aging 10 years on average. And this can be mitigated with hormone replacement, which is why I'm doing it. And we talk about chronic stress, how clinical PTSD diagnosis correlates with a 15-year acceleration in biological age. We talk about exercise, how moderate exercise is better than excessive training, which can increase inflammation, especially in women. And we talk about also where you can get this test. You can get it on glycanage.com. So our guest, Nikolina Lauc, she's the GlycanAge's CEO and co-founder, and is a successful entrepreneur with proven experience in scaling startups, and is currently on a mission to unlock the human glycome for preventive health and longevity. GlycanAge stands at the forefront of the health tech and longevity sectors, boasting a technology forged from over 3 decades of rigorous research and analysis of over 200,000 test samples. Utilizing the largest proprietary data set of the human glycome, GlycanAge is pioneering advanced blood biomarkers for the prediction of age-related diseases. You can do this biological age test at GlycanAge.com. Nicolina, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got into, testing for biological age.
Well, it depends on what part of the story you want on that. But uh, if you want to go back in history, it was because of my parents. So both my parents are scientists, and this was a random uh, discovery by my father over 15 years ago. So he told me when I was 19 years old that he can measure aging on a molecular level. And I obviously didn't care about it much when I was 19. So he invented one of the first biomarkers to measure aging on this level, called the glycan clock, or even the name of the company is based on that first paper they had It was called the Glycan Bio Age. So that's where it started. And I don't think I personally had an interest in it until about 5 years ago, because I mainly understood it. And I think personally, I like aging. I like getting older every year. If anything, I've always been trying to up my age when people would ask me how old I am. Um, but on a biological perspective or a health decline perspective, it makes a lot more sense to monitor this and have it as young as possible so that you can have a good quality of life later.
Yes, yeah, and so tell us, what are glycans? So you offer a test at your company at GlycanAge, and what exactly are glycans, and why do you wanna measure them to determine your biological aging and how fast you're aging?
They're complex carbs, and people always get confused when we say carbs because they think about simple sugars or dietary sugars, or maybe they think about how your biology would respond to these dietary sugars. And we haven't yet reached that level of public awareness on glycans as a um, complexly post-translation modification or something that changes how your biology works beyond your genetics and epigenetics. So there was this paper my father wrote over 10 years ago now, where he called glycans the third revolution in evolution. It's a way that we've evolved to change function without having to change our genes or turn certain genes on and off. We change proteins real in real time by altering their glycans, which are partially genetically encoded. So they're inherited as a complex trait, where you have a number of different genes, which would define the type of glycan that would attach to a certain place on your protein. But it's a step in evolution that enabled multi-cell life. All of our biology communicates through glycans. And every single process since we've been multi-cell is mediated by glycans. And that's from, for example, your blood groups will be defined by different glycans on your blood cells. Conception happens because of glycans, and all immunocommunication happens through glycans, which is this key system that keeps us alive. And what we focused on is this adaptive immune system, or this aging immune system, that would learn throughout life and prepare you for threats, but unfortunately also, as we get older, become a threat to ourselves by accumulating this low-grade chronic inflammation, or losing certain function that I had when I was young, meaning to suppress inflammation after they've activated it for a legitimate threat, like a virus or cancer. So we kind of became obsessed with this field, and um, my father is actually the second most published scientist in glycobiology. He's dedicated his last 30 years to it, and it's a very exciting space.
Right, fantastic. Yeah, and so at GlycanAge, you're measuring your biological age, and you guys are doing a lot of research in this glycobiology field. Can you talk about some of the research that you're doing that that helps people determine what their actual age is?
And maybe let's define the age as well. You can think of it more as an immune age, or something we call inflammaging. So it's this accumulation of damage to your immune system throughout life, which would then accumulate and predispose us to disease and mortality. So it's very different to skin aging or some other ways you can measure aging on a different system, but it's very relevant to your health outcome and health risks in the long run. So research-wise, it again, depends on what you want to focus on, because we've published more than 300 different clinical trials, both looking at natural aging or different biobanks, and longitudinally following people to see what happens to their glycans, and specifically looking at certain diseases. Um, and then also understanding that this is something that's relevant to aging. That happened because we started to look at this big cohorts of people that hasn't been done before. So in 2006, our lab pioneered the first large human glycome study, and we analyzed the first 1,000 human glycomes that were ever analyzed. Everything before was maybe up to 100, and that was a high scale study. 1,000 was never imagined before. And then we went to 10,000. Today we're at over 200,000 glycans that were analyzed in our lab, and that's over 80% or 85% of what the world has looked at so far. So we specialize in a, at the time, niche area, but something that's very relevant to preventive health and also personalized medicine and healthcare. Because the most interesting finding about glycans, you're looking at this very early molecular level of decline, health decline. And if we're connecting this to a specific disease, glycans are like a language, they're sugar language. And certain, it's inflammation where a certain signature would lead to cardio inflammation. Another signature would lead to autoimmune inflammation, where something different would lead to a metabolic disease. So you can define where this inflammation is going to go in 10 years' time. And with this work with the longitudinal biobanks, we've seen that throughout a certain glycan signature, or they're called glycosylation patterns, we can predict hypertension 6 years ahead of time with 98% accuracy. We can predict rheumatoid arthritis 10 years ahead of time with 92% accuracy. So they're very good at preempting a problem before it actually becomes a problem. And in some cases, we even know how to prevent it. So the signature that would indicate a cardiovascular problem in the future would respond to physical activity. Or the signature that would indicate diabetes or insulin resistance would respond to dietary changes like caloric restriction and weight loss. So you can tell somebody on time that they're heading towards a health concern or a problem, but you have plenty of time to actually do something about it and prevent it from happening.
If you're taking protein powder, you need to stop and listen to this. So the Clean Label Project recently tested 160 of the top selling protein powders in the US. So they tested 83% of the market, which is 70 different brands, and 40% of the products tested exceeded Prop 65 safety thresholds for lead. 21% had more than 2 times the Prop 65 safety thresholds for other heavy metals and toxins. 65% of chocolate protein powders tested over the Prop 65 safety thresholds, and 77% of plant-based protein powders tested above these thresholds as well. That's definitely not what you want from products that are supposed to support your health, particularly it's something that you're consuming daily. What this study found was that Puree's PW1 protein powder was awarded the #1 cleanest protein powder out of 130 different brands. So the choice is clear. That's why I love Puree's PW1 whey protein powder. Every batch is third-party tested against 200 plus contaminants. They don't sell any product unless it passes these tests, and they make all of their third-party tests available via a QR code. So you can scan this QR code and you can see exactly what is in this product and what this batch tested for. No other brand is doing that because they won't pass the test. Each serving gives you 21 grams of minimally processed, clean, high-quality whey protein powder from pasture-raised cow's milk. So no hormones, no GMOs, no pesticides, nothing to worry about. And I personally love the bourbon vanilla flavor. You get real vanilla seeds from bourbon vanilla from Madagascar, which is known as the best vanilla in the world. It's high quality. It tastes amazing. Even my daughter loves it. Even my daughter mentioned how she loves the vanilla flavor in it. And I work with Puree on an amazing deal for you. You can get 20% off, or if you choose the already discounted subscription, you get almost a third off the price. But you're only going to get this deal if you visit my exclusive link at puree.com/Wendy and use coupon code Wendy. So that's PURI.com/Wendy, WENDY, and just use my code Wendy to get 20% off this amazing deal of the highest quality whey protein powder that's been tested for 200 plus contaminants. So you can't beat this for quality. This is my number one recommendation for protein powder because the results are in. Puri is the number one cleanest testing protein powder on the market. Yeah, much easier to prevent than when you develop it and there's all kinds of damage and inflammation and decades of damage that may not be able to undo. So really valuable information. And so when you do your GlycanAge test, what can people expect? So what kind of markers or predictive information can they glean from doing this test?
So the simplest thing about it is that we can give you a biological age, which then puts you into context of where your level of inflammation is or inflammaging compared to this large cohort of over 200,000 people. So are you 10 years ahead, 10 years behind? That on itself is a good general marker of overall health. Then we look at these anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory aspects of your immune system. So these glycans that would create inflammation or they would suppress inflammation, and you need a balance between both, not too much, not too little on any side. And then we have some certain glycan structures which would be specific to risk factors, like a cardio risk or a metabolic risk. And depends on where you do the test. If you do it as a consumer, we can't give you any disease associations or indication. Well, if you do it through a private clinic, and we work with thousands of clinics across the world, we give them additional information and we give them the overlap of your glycans with the different disease signatures, so they can do early additional diagnostic testing or put you on the prevention protocol. So what we encourage with consumers is to share these reports with your doctor. There's an option where you can share this extended medical version of the report with your own doctor, and then have somebody, because we don't want to scare consumers. I think that's a mistake a lot of companies made, where they gave this scary information to an end user who didn't know how to respond to it or use it for its purpose. Well, if we have somebody who can read a paper in between and make an educated kind of conclusion from it, that really helps in understanding and adoption of change.
Yeah, and I think doing a test like this is a fantastic biomarker. You're not going to get this at your typical conventional medical doctor, but really important to track your biological age to see how you're doing with your diet, your lifestyle, your choices, your detoxification strategies, hopefully. And so say someone they do the test and they want to improve a lot of the markers on the test. So what are the top factors that will improve biological aging that you recommend people do?
Well, some things depend on what we've been able to research and publish, so we can make very firm claims. And some is based on what we see in practice. So we have smaller studies with smaller cohort sizes, but we see very strong effect. And of course, diet and exercise have a positive effect in the right measure. So it's not over exercise, because then we see that you can actually promote inflammation, but moderate, the right level for the right person is very anti-inflammatory. Same as with diet, weight loss, caloric restriction. It really depends on what do you as an individual need to improve. That can also be sleep. So we see that somebody who's diagnosed with sleep apnea, on average, they have 7 years acceleration on their clock. So this would assume that if you fix this problem or you improve sleep, you can also improve that acceleration. But if you ask me what is the strongest factor on the clock that would accelerate it, but also decelerate it, connected to natural aging, that would be estrogen loss, both in men and women, but more severely in women because of menopause. We see that this acceleration of inflammation in the menopause transition, perimenopause to menopause, is about 10 years on average. Like, can be much more or a little bit less. And that can be rescued with the replacement of estrogen, which of course needs to be timely and personalized. And it's an area with a lot of controversy for unnecessary reasons, because now we do have long-term trials showing that estrogen does prolong lifespan. There was a big study that just came out from the UK Biobank, 300,000 people, where they looked at, from all the commonly prescribed drugs, what prolonged lifespan and reduced mortality. And they evaluated about 406 drugs. Majority of them reduce lifespan and promote mortality. But there was 14 drugs that increase lifespan and decrease mortality, and 4 of these were estrogens. So we do know that this is a very big factor for longevity. And that's where we can see big acceleration if you lose it, and then also big deceleration if you replace it, which is on average also these 7 to 10 years.
Yeah, when I went into menopause maybe 2 years ago, I started having all these musculoskeletal issues and for sure inflammation and constantly injuring myself, and it was just driving me crazy. And then after a while, it finally dawned on me it was the lack of estrogen. And then I needed to look into the hormone replacement therapy. And God, I feel so much better. I'm just not having this inflammation and muscle injuries and that really also cause a lot of other problems, sleep issues, lack of ability to exercise because you're not able to exercise, which promotes longevity and sleep. And so it's just this catch-22, that I found myself in for over like a year, 18 months before I was able to kind of finally figure that out. But I think a lot of women don't realize they have pain syndromes, they have more injuries and in low progesterone as well, which helps you to sleep and turns off, estrogens as well. There's a whole host of problems that happen when those hormones start taking a nosedive in well before menopause as well. I wish I'd been tested and started replacement much earlier than I did.
The problem is there's no test you can actually run to make that conclusion. Hopefully there will be, and I think that will be an inflammation-based test on glycans. So we actually discovered a novel biomarker there to indicate when you've lost estrogen overall before your cycle has stopped. And that's one of the problems, because now a lot of people promote estrogen as anti-inflammatory. And actually, it's what keeps our body in homeostasis, or this perfect balance of the organism. So there shouldn't be too little, there shouldn't be too much. It should be optimal balance for you as an individual. And now the problem is that this reference range for estrogen is very broad. It's from 65 to 365 or 350. And when you were 20, maybe your level was 200 or 250. Now you're testing your estrogen for the first time at 45. It comes back at 65 or 70, and your doctor tells you your estrogen is normal. You're fine. Well, because your individual level declined, you have all these symptoms, but you don't know where they're coming from because you can't look at estrogen directly. So what we see is, as your individual level drops, the level that keeps you in balance, inflammation goes up. And that's the main reason we see this inflammation in that age period. And as you put the estrogen back, and you also have to optimize the dose, because we're very individual, and the way it's prescribed, or at least what's written on the label, it's kind of the smallest dose, and that's what you should start with. But then it should be optimized to what your body needs, which might be this small dose, might be a bigger dose, and it might be a combination of different hormones. And that's where we're lacking tools in clinical practice. So if you look at the statistics, they're horrendous. There was a survey in the UK where they showed that you visit your doctor 6 to 7 times with menopause symptoms before that actually gets correctly identified. And that could be insomnia, depression. You can get a sleeping pill or an antidepressant, but you wouldn't get estrogen. And there's a big fear around prescribing it because of the WHI study that was done 20 years ago, which kind of vilified estrogen, which in the long term, as we looked at the data, even that old synthetic form of estrogen was more good than bad. But it is something that will take us a long time to rectify in the public eye. So now when you look at the amount of women that have symptoms of menopause, it's between 80 and 90%. So it's majority of women have symptoms of menopause. Between 7 and 14% are actually on estrogen. That's 14% in UK, less than 7% in the US. So
Yeah,
there's a
it's so
drug
sad. It's so
which
sad.
removes all these symptoms that all of us, all women are suffering from, and it prolongs lifespan and has a lot of positive effects, yet we're all scared of it and we
Yeah.
choose to suffer.
Yeah, I spent years trying to figure out why can't I sleep. I literally have become an expert on sleep because I just couldn't, no matter what I did. I was like, and then I was like, oh, you know what? It's just stress, but taking progesterone reduces stress. It produces GABA. And so, yeah, so progesterone also life-changing as well for many women. And, yeah, so it's good to know that the estrogen, the hormone replacement, is deflammatory and anti-aging and improves health outcomes. Is there anything else we should be aware of? Something that really helps to, change the numbers, improve your testing, improve your longevity as well?
So if you look at the second highest impact from what we know right now, and it's of course very hard to measure, it's stress. So if you have a clinical diagnosis of PTSD, that gives you an average of 15 years on the Glycan clock. So menopause gives you an average of 10. Well, a chronic stress state gives you 15. Um, we've done another study that's just coming out now on medical residents in their first year of residence, medical doctors. And there you have the lack of sleep, very poor diet, but most of all, very high levels of stress because lives are at risk and you've never done this job before. So we've done the psychological questionnaires with 100 residents and measured their glycans. And with the scores on anxiety, depression, and stress had the biggest correlation with your results. And in some cases, and this is not a published paper, so I don't want to say something wrong, but I think the average acceleration will be above the 15 years and sometimes even 20 in that period of time. Which is all, of course, mainly attributed to stress. And that's something that's hard to measure and hard to intervene in because you have two choices. You can remove the stressor, or you can get better at stress. And getting better at stress is very hard to do. But maybe I'll give you a case study where that was very easily fixed because, you can only accumulate so much stress. But there was this executive that worked with one of the functional medicine practices, and every few months they do a case review with us and they show us some interesting case studies in practice. And there was this lady who had a high-level executive job, very stressful by nature, and two young kids. And then she did HIIT training every evening. And her glycan clock was 15 years above what it should have been. And then her doctor was like, okay, well, we can't take away the kids. We can't change your job right now. Let's change HIIT to yoga. Because that's physical stress, but you're putting it on top of psychological stress and a very demanding schedule. And she changed the HIIT to yoga. And within less than 3 months, her age dropped 13 years. So she got much closer to her age. So if you can identify what is the stress factor in that person, or what is the one thing you can change that's high impact, that can basically remedy majority of the damage.
So I want to take a minute to talk about the health benefits of olive oil and thank one of our sponsors of the Myers Detox podcast called Fresh Pressed Olive Oils. Like many of you, I'm always trying to eat healthier, and that's why I love really good olive oil. I eat olive oil every single day for its many antioxidants and longevity benefits. Olive oil is the cornerstone of the Mediterranean diet, proven to be among the healthiest in the world. And Sicilians from Italy and some islands in Greece have some of the longest lived people in the world because they're eating olive oil every single day. So check out this article from Life Extension magazine. Olive oil markedly extends human lifespan. In a long-term clinical study, those who ingested the most olive oil-derived polyphenols lived 9.5 years longer if they're over the age of 65. And the Harvard School of Public Health has announced the results of a 28-year study showing that just over a half a teaspoon of olive oil per day is associated with a lower risk of dying from cardiovascular disease, cancer, neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's, respiratory disease, and it's been shown to, in the research, to reduce high LDL cholesterol. It helps prevent type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity. And it may also help to prevent arthritis and osteoporosis. There's so many health benefits. So whenever you buy olive oil, the four most important words to remember are the fresher, the better. So olive oil packs the most flavor and the most nutrients when it's fresh from the farm. And that's the problem with supermarket olive oils. They're not fresh. They can be sitting on the shelf for months, transported overseas on ships, losing the polyphenols and antioxidants, with the healthy fats even going rancid the longer they sit in the bottle. And that defeats the whole purpose. Not only that, but most olive oils sold in the US are not actually olive oil. They're mixed with canola and other unhealthy industrial GMO seed oils that you're trying to avoid by choosing olive oil in the first place. So it's really shocking that this has been allowed to happen, but there just isn't much oversight in the industry. And that's why I stopped buying olive oil from the grocery store years ago, because you just have no idea what you're getting. And so that's why I love getting my olive oil direct from someone that I trust, from TJ Robinson, who's known as the olive oil hunter. He has found all these artisanal small farms producing olive oil like they've done for thousands of years. And I so look forward to my quarterly shipment of olive oil from Spain, Italy, Australia, and other countries. This one is from Portugal. And depending on the country, and the olive oils are ripe and in season, they press the olive oil and they bottle it and they send it to you right away. So it's the freshest that you can get. And so when I tasted TJ's Farm Fresh oils, I fell in love with them. They're so fresh. They're so pungent. This is how olive oil is supposed to taste. And they're incredibly delicious on salad, veggies, pasta, meat, fish, you name it. Olive oil also has zero carbs, so it's ideal for low carb, ketogenic, and paleo lifestyles. And as an introduction to his fresh pressed olive oil club, TJ is willing to send you a full size $39 bottle of one of the world's finest artisanal olive oils, fresh from the new harvest, for just $1 to help him cover shipping. So you can go take advantage of that at getfreshwendy.com. So you get a $39 bottle for only $1 at getfreshwendy.com. Again, that's getfreshwendy.com. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I don't think people realize how stressful some, like, a lot of people do this high intensity cardio, especially at night. I can only imagine that makes your cortisol, your blood sugar goes up, and then it screws up the rest of your sleep for the rest of the night, you know?
It's a contradiction because we all believe that, this more is more with fitness, and that it will kind of optimize our performance in high stress. And you get a adrenaline rush from it. Um, but there is such a thing as too much. And we know it from the studies we did on different types of exercise. We were comparing people who just start to exercise, people who moderately exercise for their majority of their lives, and professional athletes, and people who are overweight and sedentary, and they never went to the gym or did any form of training. And the inflammation levels in the sedentary overweight population compared to professional athlete was the same. So you have the same level of chronic inflammation as a fit athlete as you would be if you were sedentary and mildly overweight, not the obese. And then we looked at men and women. And if you compare them, women had the highest biological age as professional athletes. They were sky high, much more, like they had much more damage than men. And you would see it in their symptoms as well, because they would frequently lose their cycles, or would have other consequences of the sports, which could be a loss of bone density as well. So a lot of these things mimic aging. And I think The complexity there is that we try to train everyone as a professional athlete. So even if you go to a random HIIT class across the street, they're trying to push you as much as you would push an athlete. They don't take into account that maybe you just finished a 12-hour shift and you're not getting enough sleep. You're all going to go in there and try to push yourself to the maximum. And also with athletes, female athletes are trained the same way as male athletes. And there are some differences that should be taken into account that we haven't yet fully explored.
Yeah, and are there any differences, say, between men and women when it comes to aging, other than, say, the athletic, comparisons? Are there any important differences there when it comes to aging?
Absolutely. Immune system. So that's the actually most striking difference if you compare the cohorts. Women generally do better pre-menopause. They're more anti-inflammatory, and that's probably connected to their hormone profile, but they will have very gradual changes with age, super gradual. So the algorithm we have for men and women is very different. And this main age acceleration would happen at menopause or perimenopause to menopause, and then they would get on the same line as men. Sometimes they will overtake men for a period of time, and then they age on the same curve as men, and men just have a straight line with aging. There's no curves in between.
Yeah, and so that's probably why we live longer as well. We have maybe improved inflammation. We generally take care of ourselves better than men, bigger consumers of health information and supplements and things like that.
We live longer, but we actually have more disease burden post-menopause than
Mm.
men. So we spend about 25% longer with chronic disease than men do. So that spend might be related to the uh, more challenging health post-menopause. And that's something that's always not taken into account because we say, oh, men live longer, but women suffer a lot longer. And those extra years don't necessarily come with health.
Mm, interesting, interesting. Yeah, and so you do a lot of research at GlycanAge. So have you noticed a difference in interventions that impact like men and women differently?
Unfortunately, we don't have enough research to separate them in terms of interventions. That's an area we want to expand on and fully understand differences with drugs, with different lifestyle choices. There just hasn't been big enough intervention trials to make those conclusions. Apart from maybe one, we did a study with exercise, so people who haven't trained before going to the gym for the first time at age 40 or between 40 and 60. And there we saw more prominent change in women in terms of the cardio markers. So their cardio risk responded a lot better than in the men in that same cohort for some reason. So that's the only anomaly I can uh, suggest, and that was relatively mild form of exercise that was very impactful for cardio health.
And so say someone does the GlycanAge test and their biological age is high. So what are some things that people can do to improve their biological age?
You have to identify the cause, and the cause is very individual, person to person. What we do, even on the consumer side, you have the consultation that's free of charge, included with the product. So we highly advise that you use that and you talk to a specialist on our team, which goes from clinical nutritionist to a medical doctor, to discuss your results and put them into perspective of you as an individual. Because of course, the reports are we don't ask you for a lot of data, and it's optional. Um, so we learn most through a conversation. It's very hard to get that through just the health report you fill. And then of course we work with private practices which have their own protocol, but it depends what's driving the inflammation or the inflammation for you. And that could be stress, it could be hormone related, it could be dietary. You really have to pinpoint and try and find the right intervention for the right person. Otherwise, something that's beneficial um, could actually be harmful, like exercise. We see it's positive in most of the studies we did. Well, if you have a high stress job and you have other stressors, maybe you should be going for something lighter, because we did a trial with HIIT training and we saw that within 12 weeks it was anti-inflammatory and reduced the ages in the study we did. But it doesn't apply in every circumstance.
Yeah,
So
and
I can't.
also the timing probably depends too. It's better in the morning than in the evening, for instance, and yeah, everyone's totally different as well.
Yeah, and you never have everyone respond the same to the same intervention. So every time, even what we do in healthcare today, most of the drugs we prescribe, we don't know if you're going to respond or not. It's an assumption at the beginning, and then we follow you, and we hope if you haven't responded, we give you the next option, and then the next option. Glycans will eventually help us make these decisions quicker. So we recently did a few trials in diabetic medication and also metformin in the healthy population. And because it was assumed that metformin is a longevity drug, and there was this uh, data that was coming out, so a lot of people started taking it off label for longevity. So we got excited and thought, okay, let's get a placebo-controlled trial. And we had a few friends who tried it, and in one case it lowered their glycanage, in another case nothing happened. So we're like, okay, we need to research this. And it was a study of overweight, healthy people, so no diagnosis, going on metformin or metformin testosterone or just testosterone. It was all men. And we saw that it didn't have a statistically significant effect in healthy people. There was 1 out of 20 people who saw positive anti-inflammatory change. So majority of the people who take metformin off-label for longevity might actually be causing more harm than good, although it's very well marketed. And the harm they mainly cause is this suppression of testosterone. And that's why, of course, the testosterone arm had a positive effect, but metformin will lower your testosterone.
Lowers your
And
energy also. I mean, you get tired. All these weight loss drugs, Ozempic and Wegovy and other ones, they make you tired as well.
yeah,
They're lowering your blood sugar, which you need for energy. So it might be great if you're diabetic, but if you're a healthy person, that's not a desirable side effect.
no. And again, it depends on what does this individual need, and testing if that first assumption will also be helpful. We did another trial on diabetics on diabetic drugs. So metformin, one that I forgot the name, and the GLP-1. And we see that in the diabetic arm, about 50% of patients respond to metformin. So if you do have diabetes, or maybe even a predisposition to diabetes, metformin could be a great thing for you. And in the GLP-1 diabetic arm, we would see if they would respond in terms of glucose or in terms of weight loss, because you can have benefit in both, but not necessarily both from the same person. So it's personalization, and we don't have these tools in practice. We're developing them now, and we're actually hoping that the genomic space will open personalized medicine, which didn't come to fruition. But with lichens, we do see a lot more promise and practicality in utilizing them to see if something works or doesn't work in a patient before you have to monitor for symptoms or spend months on a drug that doesn't work for you.
So for anyone listening that really wants to detox their body, go to heavymetalsquiz.com. I created a quiz for you. It only takes a couple of seconds. Based on some lifestyle questions, you can get your toxicity score and get a free video series that answers all of your frequently asked questions about how to detox your body. Check it out, heavymetalsquiz.com. Yeah, I mean, I'm taking berberine, and that's supposed to work on the similar pathways as metformin without some of the side effects, and that's easier to take. Don't need a prescription as well. So why don't you tell the listeners where they can get this test, roughly, like kind of what is the price point, and what is the whole process involved?
Sure. So we have a consumer platform or a web shop, and you can buy it online. It's available in over 60 countries so far. So most places we can cater to, and that's because it's a dry blood stain sample that you do at home. and it's stable in the post for over 2 weeks. So we get samples from Japan, Singapore, all across the world. It's priced at $348. That's the test, and it includes the consultation. It's not mandatory, but we offer it as an additional layer of service. Now, if you are already a patient in a longevity clinic, well, patient, you're not sick yet, client in a longevity clinic or preventive health practice or functional medicine clinic, we work with a lot of these over 2,000 or even now 2,500 across the world. So it could be that your practice provides it. And the added benefit of that is that they can often give you a prescription. So if it is somebody going through menopause, or you are looking to try some early preventive therapies, there's a lot of options there. And that's, of course, much better guided by a medical professional than trying to do it on your own.
Okay, fantastic. So go to GlycanAge, GlycanAge.com,
That's
and
it.
get your test. I did the test, fantastic information. And definitely it's one of the biomarkers that I'm tracking because I want to live a long, 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 long time. And I want to figure out what I'm not doing right, what I need to tweak. So a lot of markers that I'm following these days. I've got my Aura ring, my continuous glucose monitor, and tracking my biological age every year as well. So definitely highly, highly, highly recommend it. So everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to the Myers Detox Podcast. I'm Dr. Wendy Myers, and on this show, we explore all types of topics related to heavy metal and chemical detoxification, health issues caused by these toxins, anti-aging, longevity, and bioenergetics, and more advanced topics in health on the show. So thanks for tuning in every week, and there's much more to come.
The Myers Detox Podcast is created and hosted by Wendy Myers. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Wendy Myers and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.